Hello again, everyone. This is Nathaniel Gibson taking you through my Week 5 multimedia discussion board on the review of the CIP plan for the City of Murrieta in the fiscal years 2022 to 2025-2026. So before getting into the breakdown of the city's finances and the uh, amount of long-term debt that the city has going towards those projects, I want to take a look at a brief overview of the resources that the city has going forward. It actually shows a very small number of funds coming from types of long-term debt. In fact, the only one is the redevelopment agency bond proceeds, which is a modern day equivalent of the CEQA, which is the California Environmental Quality Act. So here's kind of a funds breakdown of the city's CIP funding resources. I know it's really small. I tried to fit it into the screen to make it as clear as possible. In the city's review, I noticed that they put a lot of focus on general fund revenues going towards their CIP budgets, which I know we talked about GO bonds this week in class, and I'll focus on that a little later. But the city really prioritizes having the money up front to fund these projects rather than using long-term debt to go towards those. Another huge revenue source for projects is the development impact fees, which are those come from an exaction or tax that the state or the city imposes on applicants who are applying and working on some of these projects in the budget. And you'll see here that is also a really large number, about 16 million going towards funding for the city's capital improvement projects. And then also this last arrow down at the bottom shows the small amount of RDA funds that are going towards funding these projects for the city. So the project that I'll be reviewing in the City of Murrieta CIP plan is the I-215 interchange at Keller Road, which is a new off-ramp that the city is building to improve access to the local Kaiser Hospital nearby. So this is a breakdown of the finances for the Keller Road and I-215 interchange project. So if you look at this first arrow here, it has about $25 million in unfunded funds for the project, which is a big problem because the city is going to have to find a way to make up that money in order to complete the project going forward. And we'll be talking about that next. Here you see some of the project is anticipating more development impact fees to be coming in toward the city in the future, and it just shows them budgeting that in each consequential year leading up to 2026. There's also a small amount of the RDA bonds that is going towards this project as well, 1.5 million, and I talked about that before. In the other side, it was previous bonds taken out by the city in the past. So I think realistically, the city has two different options that it can use going forward in order to fund the long-term projects for the CIP plan. The first one is general obligation bonds. I think this is a great match with how the city approaches funding its projects, because these are bonds which are repaid through general revenue funds, and I think is something that the city already tries to prioritize due to a large amount of money that comes from the city's general fund in each CIP year. So I think moving forward, this would be a best option if the city were to take on different types of debt, although that is something it tries to stray away from as well. Another option is trying to compete and apply for more federal or state funding in the form of grants, which Ultimately, they don't need to be repaid, which is a huge pro, but there's also the downside of them having to compete with other cities and other projects where that funding is also needed. So it may not actually get the right amount of funding that it needs for these projects and might have to rely on bonds in the long term. So I think using a mixture of both state grants and federal grants and GO bonds moving forward would be a good approach for the city. So that wraps up my review of the city's CIP plan for Murrieta for 2021 to 2026. I'm really looking forward to hearing what you guys have reviewed of your city's CIP projects as well.